to try to use to their advantage is buzzwords and a lot of smoke and mirrors to make things difficult, when in reality marketing isn't all that difficult. It's just really hard to do consistently and really hard to do consistently well. So in that sense, it is very difficult. But as I travel and I speak at so many conferences throughout the country and at this point the world, one of the questions I get asked the most is, Matt, what's the secret to marketing? And every time my answer is less than stunning when I say, honestly, the secret is consistency. But it's also the hardest thing to do. So one of the things we want and we hope for you out of the one-page marketing plan we've developed is to get a sense of how to do it consistently and to get some accountability invited into that process for yourself. There's actually a one-page spreadsheet that goes with this that we will email out to the attendee or to the registrants of today's webinar. So you'll get a copy of the actual one-page plan. And then together in our time together, we're going to talk about the tactical execution of that plan. So you'll get a copy of the plan, which is an Excel spreadsheet, lots of information you can fill out there, and you'll see little boxes on it. And each of those little boxes is designed, it's organized by columns, and each column is representative of a week of the year, and then each row is representative of a marketing activity. And you'll fill those in. A lot of those are already color-coded for you, but you'll fill those in and you'll check off the box that that column and that row meeting creates. So there are these little check boxes, these little to-do boxes for you every week of the year laid out for you. So a really helpful tool to help you simplify marketing and set the plan of going about executing that on a weekly basis and what needs to happen. You'll also notice when you get that there's a lot of blank lines at the bottom of that. That's for you to fill in your own marketing responsibilities, your own tasks on top of the ones that we're going to recommend for you. So you can customize that plan and color code those tasks that you add of your own to make it more meaningful for you. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, what we want for you is to have a plan in your hands you can execute and you can set about executing. Or to have a plan you can hand to somebody on your team. If you have staff, people like that, to help you out, you can set that plan to them and you can circle back to that one-page marketing plan every week and meet on that briefly and go over it together. So it creates that accountability and simplification of the whole marketing process for you. So that's a little bit about us, a little bit about me, and then mostly about kind of what brought us to where we are today and the plan that we have created to help set out for you. And then again, in our time together today, we're going to be walking you through the tactical how-to of executing that plan. So very much tactical, very much execution-oriented in our conversation today. A little bit of housekeeping. We will email a copy of this out to everyone who registered today. So despite what it says there on the screen, you don't actually have to email me to get a copy of these slides. We will email a copy of this recording out to everyone who registered for the webinar today. So check that out. We will also have Q&A time at the end of our time together. So if you have a question, use the chat panel for that. Drop your question in the chat panel as it comes up, and then we will circle back to those questions at the end of our time together and get as many of those answered for as we can. So with that and with our housekeeping behind us, let's dive in to our topic for today. And as we do this, as we look ahead, as we're developing a plan, we really have to start by taking a look back at where we've come from. So we say let's take a look back at 2015 because that's kind of the data that we have, but really we're halfway through the year at this point almost. So I would say let's look at this year to date as well. So look at 2015, but also look at the first half of this year, which is crazy to say this year is almost half over, but it is. And as we look at that, often I like to ask the question of people, if we fast forward a year and we're sitting here together on June 8th, 2017, how many of us would be happy if the 12 months we have ahead of us were the exact same as the 12 months behind us? And in the same way, how many of us would be happy if our 2016 was the exact same as our 2015? And when we ask that in an audience, usually about 5% of the room raises their hands and say, you know, if next year is the same as last year, I'd be really, really happy with that. And that's good for you. That's awesome. That means you had a great 2015. But the other 95% of the people are the people we're usually talking to, and those are the people that want 2016 to be different. And 95% of people tell us they want 2016, the second half of it, or looking ahead at 2017 already, to be better than the previous period of time. And when we look at better, we're looking at a couple things, and those are the scarcity of resources, which is really what we all face. We have time and money. Those are our two biggest resources, and we can trade them for each other. We can trade money for time by buying other people's time and hiring staff and hiring partners and those types of things, or we can trade our time for other people's money. You might do that in your own business. You're trading your time and your product, if you will, for your customers' money. And in the same way, you have to make those decisions. So as we look ahead, results is about more than what a lot of people claim it is. Results is about driving numbers, yes, but it's about driving success from a money perspective and also from a time perspective. So you may be happy next year if your money side of the equation is the exact same, but would you be happier if the time side of that equation was more in your favor? You had to spend less time to create the same amount of money, or you invested more time to create more money by growing your business, or you invested money to create a return on your investment and drive more revenue for your business. Those are the things we're really looking at, and the resources we have and the decisions we have to make and the questions we have to ask ourselves to be able to figure out what do we want to do with the second half of this year? How do we want it to be different than the first half and get where we're going? As we do that, and I ask that question, and I always follow it up with this question of how many of us have made major changes in our marketing strategy this year to date? 95% of people tell us they want next year to be different, or they want the second half of this year to be different. But then when I ask how many have made changes to their marketing strategy, I get about the same 5%, and coincidentally, it's oftentimes the same people. 5% of people say they've made a major change in their marketing strategy in the last year. So if we know we want things to be different, but we haven't made any changes to make them different, we fall into Einstein's definition of insanity. And that's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If we want the second half of this year to be different, we have to be willing to do something different to get us there. And things don't come on overnight, right? I understand like what I'm saying. You can't just turn on marketing and the second half of your year is going to be rainbows and butterflies. It's not that easy. Marketing takes time. It takes consistency. It takes energy. It takes momentum to really build towards something. But you've got to be planning for those things now and making those investments now, knowing that if it's a 6 to 12-month investment you're making to see a payoff, better to start today than wait 6 months, because then you're just that much further away from seeing those results. And being willing to do something different today than you've done before. Take a step in a different direction today. Take a risk you haven't taken before, and you'll experience and achieve results you haven't achieved before. So let's dive into that. How do we go about the process of doing that? We believe it starts with developing a successful marketing strategy. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't start with a strategy. They just start. They start executing without stopping long enough to really ask some good questions and figure out what their strategy is. So here's a couple questions we'd encourage you to ask yourself as you're spending time reflecting on today's webinar. Maybe you're listening to the recording with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. Ask yourself these questions and write down the answers. Are you happy with your current results? You know, we touched on that a little bit already. If next year is the same as this year, we'll be happy with that. What are your goals? What are you working towards? What are the objectives you're going to set towards achieving those goals that you've laid out for yourself? How will you measure the return on your investment? Because no matter what you do, if you're making changes, you're making an investment. You're either investing time or you're investing money. Those are the two things you can invest. And either way, you want to get a handle on and you want to understand how you're going to measure that return. And then what marketing methods are right for you. What's right for some isn't right for all. And you have to understand what is right for you as you're working on executing your marketing strategy. So as we look forward to that, how many of us would like a formula for hitting our desired bookings goal in 2016? Usually, when we're talking about making things better, it's about bookings. That's what it comes down to. Most people are looking at that revenue number. People in mature businesses that are in more of a place of lifestyle sometimes are looking at the time equation. But usually the most common thing we hear is people are looking to change revenue, looking to drive bookings. So let's work together to lay out a formula. And let's dive in on how exactly we're going to do that. For our conversation together today, we're going to make an assumption here. We're going to make the assumption, and we're going to use some language and say, we're going to talk about traffic to your website on our webinar today. And you're going to hear me use that. You're going to see it on the slides. But what I want you to make a shift in your mind is that traffic on your website is the measurement of prospective customers. Because people finding you and finding your website and finding your property as a result of that, that is a prospective customer if you're doing marketing well. So as we think about that, as we think about these numbers, this formula we're going to talk about, think about that in terms of prospective customers. And we'll talk about analytics. But analytics is ultimately the measure of prospective customers who are finding your website. And if you think about it like that, I would bet that it would change the amount of time you spend monitoring and analyzing your analytics. So let's dive in. Let's look at from a tactical perspective, how are we going to execute this one-page marketing plan? For us, it starts with email marketing. If you've been on webinars with us in the past, you've heard us talk about how great a source of traffic, of prospective customers, email marketing is. So how many of us are sending email campaigns at least monthly? Well, again, when we teach this in person and we get a show of hands, there's maybe 20% of the room that raises their hands. And what we know is that email marketing is the area that we as an industry are investing the least amount of time into. Yet study after study tells us that email marketing provides the highest return on investment of any marketing medium out there. So the area that provides the highest ROI is the area that the fewest of us are investing in, we have a problem. So if you take nothing else away from this webinar, I would encourage you to get more aggressive from an email marketing perspective. Because when we think about it, who is the person who is most likely to do business with us in the future? Assuming we've done a good job delivering our experience, our guest experience, the person most likely to do business with you in the future is the person that has done business with you in the past. And you have a database full of those people that chances are you're doing nothing with. Or if you are doing something with it, you may not be doing enough. We really recommend sending 2 campaigns per month to help stay top of mind with your guests and stay relevant. Give them reasons to come back and visit you year after year and come back in other times of the year. Oftentimes you'll have guests that come the same time every year, but that may be because they would come in shoulder season or they'd come in off season, but you haven't educated them about all the things there are to do. So they believe that it's a quiet, dead little town when nothing's going on. Obviously not talking about any specific towns, but if you're in a town that has an off season or a shoulder season, that's an assumption a lot of travelers make. There's nothing going on in those seasons. But you have to do the job of telling that story. You have to give them reasons to come visit you. Show them your shoulder season rates and present the value proposition that creates. Come do all these great things. The crowds are smaller and the rates are lower in the shoulder season. Or market your destination so well that rates don't go down because your shoulder season becomes peak season and you live at this place of a longer peak season, which is a great place to be. In Charleston, for example, we pretty much live at peak season rates for about 10 months of the year. You know, there's really only 2 months in Charleston that are a little bit soft. Yes, there are fluctuations within that, but it's really a 10-month destination. And as such, there's so much going on. You have to tell the story about your destination and what's driving success, what's bringing people to the area, and get in the path of travelers when they're finding those things, as well as educating your customer base about what's going on. So those are 2 things we'd encourage you to really do. I'm not going to read everything on the screen, but so much that goes into a successful email marketing strategy. And as we do that, our customers see on average an 8% click-through rate and 5 bookings a month from email marketing. And we get to an 8% click-through rate by sending 2 campaigns per month and each campaign getting a 4% click-through rate. So 2 times a month times 4% means 8% of your database is going to be clicking through. And if 8% of your database comes through in a given month, if you have a database of 5,000 people, you're talking about 400 visits to your month every website, to your website every month that you're not getting right now because you're not taking advantage of email marketing. If you have a 10,000 person database, 8% of that is 800 visits to your website. 800 prospective customers coming and checking out your property, checking out reasons to come visit every month that you're not tapping into right now. Absolutely huge opportunity, and I think we've got that slide coming up for you to kind of make that, but that's a quick plug-in for that formula. And as you're doing that, the most important metrics to track are going to be traffic and open rate. We all get that. We track those things closely, but don't be so caught up on those you forget the value of just maintaining top-of-mind awareness. There's tremendous value in just maintaining that top-of-mind awareness. Even if someone doesn't open your email, they don't click on anything, they don't go to your website, you've still achieved, you've still accomplished something by maintaining that top-of-mind awareness because you still said, aha, I remember that time, I remember that experience, I remember going on that trip, I need to go back there. I can't go today. I'm covered up in work. I'm busy, but I need to go back there. And the next time that they're thinking about a vacation, if you are the last person to touch them, it's most likely that they're going to be thinking about you when they're planning that vacation. So the next thing we're going to look at here is blogging. Blogging is a completely misunderstood platform or medium in today's modern marketing world. Seth Godin said a few years ago that content marketing is the only marketing left. And if you follow Seth Godin, you know the creativity and the mindset he brings to marketing. For him to make a statement like that says a lot about what blogging and content marketing is all about. But it's really about creating content that's well written, that's well received, that will help you get found by people when they're planning a trip to your destination. Write content about the things people are searching for when they're planning their trip, and if you do it well enough and you do it consistently enough, Google will rank that content. Because after all, Google is everyone's travel agent. Very few people are actually going and asking their travel agent questions about destinations anymore, because at their fingertips, 24/7, Google has the answer to all their questions. And when Google has the answer, they're feeding up your content if you're doing this well. You are the one that's actually answering that question for people. You're getting them to your website as a result. And we'll show you an example of that, one of thousands of examples of that we've developed over the years here at Q4Launch. But it's so important because we have to be creating that content. We tell people content or blogs are the fuel to your marketing fire. Everything is going to stem from a great content creation or a great blogging strategy. That's the foundation for everything else we're going to be doing. So how many of us are blogging at least weekly? You have to be blogging at least weekly because that's the consistency that we have found Google is looking for when they're choosing who to rank for different search terms, for sites that are consistently creating great quality content. I said it at the beginning, but consistency is the hardest thing to do well, and that weekly piece is the key to that whole scenario. And as we look at our formula, we would tell you to count on this for another 750 to 5,000 visits. On the low side, we'd say 750, and we try to estimate conservatively. But if you're going to commit to the strategy for years to come, that can grow. We have customers who get 10,000 visits a month entering their website through their blog. 10,000 prospective travelers every month who discover that destination, discover that property by their blog and the work that's been put in there for them over the last 4 years. So 750 is a good average, a good estimate for all of us, but know that based on the destination you're in, other factors, it could significantly grow from there. And a lot of traffic could come into your site from this. A lot of travelers could discover you via this strategy. The other thing we want you to know is that this is a long-term strategy. What we see, every customer we launch this strategy with time and time again, it takes 6 to 12 months to start producing results. The first 6 months, it's almost like radio silence. Google doesn't rank our blogs. They don't feed us traffic. We see very little results in those first 6 months. And if you're doing this on your own without the guidance of somebody, your gut is, I should quit. I've been investing in this 6 months and no one is reading my blog. Why am I spending 5 hours a week creating all this content and no one's reading it? You're dozens, if not hundreds of hours in, and it's time to quit. And you think, man, Matt was a total liar. Like, totally led me astray. I'm never going to his webinars again. When in reality, you were on the precipice of a breakthrough most likely, but you quit too early. We think Google knows that. We think Google knows most people will quit after 6 months that they haven't seen results. And 6 months isn't magical from a quitting perspective. For most people, they'd quit much sooner than that. But what we've seen in that 7th through the 12th month that Google starts ranking our blogs. They reward us with those positions. And when they do that, we start bringing in traffic for terms we've never got traffic for before. And we see all this in analytics, and we're tracking all this based on how people are entering our websites. And it's so critical. And if in the 7th through the 12th month it starts working, you can imagine what happens in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year from a traffic perspective. It continues to build on itself and continues to grow. So that's why it's so important to publish a weekly blog on keyword-specific content, because it's going to help you get found for a massive amount of traffic. And statistically, as we study marketing, the statistic we have found is that the sites that are actively blogging, and this isn't specific to the travel space, but sites that are actively blogging see 55% more traffic than those that don't. And that's because of how much content they're creating. Every update Google has ever made has rewarded sites that create great quality content on a consistent basis. So it just bears to make sense. Those that do would be getting more traffic than those that don't. So here's a great example of a blog we wrote for one of our customers in the Hocking Hills of Ohio. We know that a lot of consumers use this type of search methodology, weekend getaways from Cincinnati. So if I'm living in Cincinnati, I'm desperate to get away. I'm looking for a weekend getaway. And they search like this because they know where they live, but they don't know where they want to go. They're open to taking a new adventure, finding a new destination, a destination they've never visited before. And that's a great customer to have. So as we look at that, we're creating content around those types of keywords. This is just one example, weekend getaways near Cincinnati. And you'll see if you do a Google search yourself that our customer, even though this blog was written back in 2014, our customer is still most likely in the top 5. I haven't run this search today, but I've run it a bunch of times, and we use software to monitor it, and I know we consistently stay in those top 5 positions. Google's bouncing things around a little bit like they always are, but we're consistently staying near the top of those. So tremendous amount of traffic to be had by building the content and ranking for it. Even years later, the blog is still paying dividends. So let's look at what that did over about a 12-month period. Over about the first 12 months that blog was ranked, very little traffic at the beginning, but then you'll see at the year mark, April 2015, and then on into the following month, that really took off. And that blog, from its beginning of its life cycle to about a year into it, delivered 2,400 visits to our customer's website, or our customer's website specifically in this case. 2,400 prospective travelers that didn't know they existed before, that weren't necessarily looking for them, but were looking for a weekend getaway near Cincinnati, discovered this property. Tremendous opportunity, tremendous amount of traffic, tremendous amount of bookings can come from using a strategy like this for yourself. So moving along here, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about social media. How many of us have active Facebook pages? And if you're playing along at home and you actually raised your hand, I know that about 95% of people raise their hand to this question. And that's great. You need to have an active Facebook page. But we get a little bit tougher. How many of us would say that your page is growing at between 5 and 10% per month? Usually we see maybe 20% of people raise their hand for this. So it's a much lower amount, but it's important because it's the practice of building an audience you can go to with a message when you need to, an audience you can make that little sales pitch into when you need to. When you have a last-minute cancellation in peak season, you have an audience you can take that message to. You can post great photos. You can post great reasons to come and boost those into your drive market for last-minute getaways. You can post the blog content you're creating and get found and go viral with posts. We've had post after post go viral in social media, and we're constantly studying that to look at what is the anatomy of a viral blog post in social. There's actually a blog on our website at Q4Launch.com about that you can search for and find on the anatomy. I think it's the topic's a little different, but how the blog post goes viral and success stories on that and lessons we've learned along the way on how to do that. So I encourage you to check that out if that's something you're working on. But it's so important to grow your following at 5 to 10% per month because that is the audience that you're building to take your message to. So as we look at this, we need to make sure that we're creating engaging content because that's what's going to keep our edge rank high. Getting people to engage with us on social media is going to keep our edge rank high. It's going to keep our posts showing up in people's news feed. And even though Facebook very much has become a pay-to-play platform, that's one of those tongue twisters that's hard to say fast, but even though it's become that, and you have to work within that, and you have to plan your strategy around that, by having content people are engaging with, you're naturally going to do better than people whose content is not being engaged with. So that's an important part of the process. And sharing great photos is a great way to get people to engage with your content. Asking for the like, comment, or share. People are simple. Just ask what you want them to do, and they will do it. You can also use like, comments, or share as a voting mechanism. You can say, are you more in the mood for the mountains or the beach today? Like for the mountains, share for the beach. And people can use that as a voting mechanism. And then when they do that, you're raising the affinity or the loyalty they have with your page. You're boosting your edge rank. You're getting your content to show up in their news feed, but also getting your content to show up in their friends' news feeds because of the relationship they have to your page. But as we think about social media and we think about the role it plays in our overall marketing strategy, I said 95% of people would raise their hand to the question, how many of us have an active Facebook page? And what I know from educating thousands of people every year and having conversations with many, many of them about marketing and about what's working and what they're doing in their strategies, I know the majority of us are spending the majority of our time, i.e. we're investing the most into our social media strategy. Yet we're investing the most into a medium that provides the lowest ROI. And I think I understand why. I mean, I get it. It's social, right? After all, it's natural. It's easy for us to do. Some of us are already on the platforms anyways, engaging with friends. So it's easy to go on there and do a little bit of engaging on behalf of our business as well. But if we're investing the most amount of our marketing time and resources into the medium with the lowest ROI, we have a marketing problem. And you'll ultimately get to the place where you think marketing doesn't work, when in reality the problem isn't marketing. Problem is your medium. There's a lot that goes into marketing. Medium is just one of the key components. Message is one of the other big ones. But you have to take the right message into the right medium at the right time to have success. So again, one of those takeaway moments, if nothing else, you heard me talk about it with email marketing, take some of the time you're investing into social media and reallocate that time into email marketing, the medium with the highest ROI. It just makes sense, right? Reallocate resources from the medium with the lowest return on investment or return on resources to the medium that provides the highest return on investment. It's kind of 101, but at the same time, if you don't stop and think about it, you've probably never had that aha moment. So hopefully that's an aha moment for you. And as you're building that formula, count on this for another 150 visits a month. Yes, we can see this go a lot higher, especially if you're creating blog content like we recommended in the last step. But it's at the end of the day, it's not the platform that's designed to drive a lot of traffic. So you're probably not going to get a lot of traffic from it. So you just got to take those steps one at a time and get traffic coming from different sources. But this one is not going to be a big one from an overall traffic perspective. Next thing that we ask is how many of us are doing ongoing SEO or search engine optimization on a monthly basis. We've probably all heard the term, or we probably wouldn't still be in business today. But this is one we see a relatively low number of people raising their hand for as well. And that's something we really think needs to change. There's a lot of people in the space claiming that SEO is dead and that you don't need to be investing into it, when in reality, SEO, like everything else, is changing at a rampant basis. Actually, SEO is probably changing much faster than just about any other marketing medium out there. Google is publishing somewhere between 2 and 5 updates to their algorithm every single day. So in the past, they published panda, penguin, pigeon, all those fluffy pea animals we've all come to know and hate. And they made these major algorithm updates all at once, and it made the news, and everybody conjectured about what was going on, and maybe you even attended one of the webinars we led on that in the past. So we've led a ton, and we've written a ton of blog content to try to help you all out on what we're seeing. But about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years now, they made a change in their strategy where from making these major updates every so often to making almost daily changes to their algorithm. And the reason behind that is they don't want you to know what they're changing. They don't want you to stop and try to figure out what they're changing. So what the takeaway is for you, if they're updating it on a constant basis, you have to be monitoring your performance on a constant basis as well. And there's lots of ways to monitor it without spending money or without paying a professional to do that. If nothing else, you can monitor it in your Google Analytics and see, is my organic traffic headed up, headed down, or remaining flat? If it's remaining flat, chances are any changes they've made haven't affected you. If it's going down, that's an indicator that something did affect you, and you need to figure it out, which might be the time you need to engage somebody who knows what they're doing to help you with that. If it's going up, chances are things you're doing are going well, and in the same way, you figure out what's going wrong when things are going wrong. When things are going well, you need to resist the urge to do nothing. And you need to try to figure out what is going well, because if we can figure out what is going well, then you have the opportunity to do more of that. If you know what's going well, you have the opportunity to do more of it. And that applies to SEO as much as it applies to anything else, but you have to be in your analytics to be able to figure those things out at the minimum. And if that's something that you don't want to spend your time on, you don't want to invest into, that's where we would encourage you to engage with somebody who is an expert in that area that can really help you, but make sure they're a trusted source, because this is an area, more than any other area, this is an area that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and a lot of people who will take advantage of your time and money if you let them. So make sure you work with a trusted partner. And there are so many great trusted partners in our industry. So I would encourage you to seek them out as you're going about doing that. But of all the things you're going to do to succeed in SEO, creating consistent quality content is the #1 way you will succeed. Every algorithm update ever made has rewarded sites that create great quality content on a consistent basis. So it's so important as a part of your strategy to be able to create that content. And if all else is equal and you're creating more quality content than your competitors are, you will win the SEO battle over a period of time. It's just hands down, it's just the way the whole system works. No smoke, no mirrors, no gray hat, black hat, white hat SEO stuff. It just comes down to creating great quality content consistently. Yes, there's more nuances. There's over 200 ranking factors in the algorithm. But the #1 most important thing to succeed is quality content, which is why it's one of the reasons we talk about blogging being the fuel for your marketing fire. That's the content that's going to help you succeed in everything else you're doing. So in 2016, as you're thinking about trying to drive more traffic, I would encourage you to set a goal of increasing traffic from organic search by 20%. Whatever that number is for you. If you have 10,000 visits a month from organic search, 20% more would be 2,000. If you have 1,000 visits from organic search, 20% more would be 200. You can do the math, but the point is, take where you are and set a goal to grow by 20%, because that, at the end of the day, is the measure of success. SEO is not dead, it's just changing. And you can succeed by driving 20% more organic search traffic this year than you did last year by having a great strategy. Our customers across the board see an average of 25 to 40% increase in organic search traffic. That's how I know it's not dead. That's how I know it's a medium that provides a ton of quality traffic, but it's changing, and you have to keep up with those changes if you plan to succeed. So we'll touch base on referring websites a little bit as well. I'm going to kind of knock through a few of these. I said there's some other things that aren't as tied into what we do in the overall mix here. Referring websites is one of those. But make sure that you're looking for local referral partners that you can be doing kind of that old school link exchange with. It can be time consuming and difficult, but it's a great way to get quality traffic. We see a lot of our customers in their analytics, some of their best traffic comes from local companies that they refer traffic back and forth with. So definitely seek those things out. And if you're paying for a referring website listing in a third-party directory or anywhere else for that matter, make sure that you're analyzing that traffic at least annually for your return on investment. And if you are and you don't have e-commerce tracking enabled, assume between a 1% and a 3% conversion ratio based on quality of the traffic source. So to kind of ungeek that a little bit, what we mean is take how much traffic you're getting from that source and assume 1 to 3% of that traffic will ultimately convert into a booking. If it's a traffic source you deem really high quality, on the 3% range. If it's lower quality traffic, maybe it's 1% or maybe it's a bit less. But think about that. So take that conversion ratio, somewhere between 1 and 3% most likely, and apply that to the traffic you got, and then multiply that by your average booking, and you will get how much bookings you probably got from that source. So that's one way to analyze the return on investment you're getting from third-party referring websites. Of course, they have a lot of other parts to their whole value proposition, but that's just one piece of it. And then the next there is find 4 new potential referring websites each quarter to gain visits, to gain traffic. And you'll see this on your one-page marketing spreadsheet when you get a copy of that. You'll see there's 4 little boxes every quarter to check off, and those boxes represent the websites you're going to be setting up those links with to get that traffic into your site. All right, moving right along, we'll touch briefly here on reputation management. It's a really important thing, but I think a lot of the misconception around reputation management is that TripAdvisor is reputation management, when in reality that's only one platform. It might be the most important platform in your business, or it might not be, depending on exactly what destination you're in and things like that. But there's a lot that goes into that. So you really need to have what we call a 5-star review strategy. And that's a specific strategy to get 5-star reviews. My wife and I just got back from our anniversary last night, actually. First time away since we had our little baby girl about 6 months ago, just the two of us, which was really exciting and an exciting time to celebrate our 8 years together. But I was really encouraged to see when we left the property we stayed at, we actually got a thanks for staying email, like we encourage so many people to send out. And they were specific to say, we hope you had a 5-star experience, and would share that with other people by leaving us a 5-star review. So what they did there was very smart and very intentional, and actually exactly what we teach when we teach on this subject. But it was, don't ask your guests, don't say you hope they had a great experience and we hope you leave us a review. Be specific and implant in the customer's mind what you want them to do. We hope you had a 5-star experience and you'll leave us a 5-star review. Because in reality, the majority of our customers are 4.5-star properties on just about every site that accepts rankings and so forth. So if we're a 4.5-star property, a 4-star review actually hurts our reputation because it lowers our average. It takes a 5-star review to help our reputation and be what we want it to be. So as you're working on your reputation management strategy, and the reason this is in here from a traffic perspective and boosting traffic, because if your reputation is better, your ranking is higher, you are going to get more traffic. No matter what the platform is, many of them in their ranking algorithm factor in reviews and the reviews that you're getting and the stars that you're getting as a part of it. So it's just part of the overall strategy and something you need to be looking at. Seasonal packages are also a great way to drive traffic, partially because it's one of the things that's going to feed our email marketing strategy, but it gives people a reason to come visit us, and it caters to their laziness by setting up packages for them. It just makes it really easy for them to book a whole experience, a whole trip, all together in one. Because after all, that's what they're booking, isn't it? They're booking a trip. They're booking an experience. They're not booking accommodations. You sell accommodations, but what they're booking is this experience, these memories they want to create. And if you help them create that, if you put it all together, in our culture that's getting busier and busier, they will reward you. Make it as easy as possible for them to have a great vacation experience, and when you do so, they'll thank you in bookings. That's just the way it works. Make it as easy as possible, and they'll thank you in bookings for that experience. So as you're doing all this, as you're working this year to drive more traffic, you've got to dive in and track that from an analytics perspective. We've mentioned it throughout our conversation today, but you need to be reviewing your analytics data at least monthly. I would say you need to spend at least a half an hour in your analytics every single month. Set it as a recurring calendar appointment. Pour yourself a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, depending on what time of day you're doing it, or maybe it doesn't depend on what time of day you're doing it. And dive in there. Understand what's going on. Understand where your traffic is coming from, where your bookings are coming from. Look for any red flags. And when we say red flags, what we're talking about is any sources you have lost traffic from. Because if you've lost traffic from a source, chances are that means you're losing business from that source. So look for those things. Look for sources that are down year over year, or look for those red flags. And then if you're working with a marketing partner, if you're engaged with someone, lean on them to lead this discussion. They should be sending you monthly reports or having conversations with you from time to time about what's going on in your analytics, what's working, what's not, what part of the strategy is going well, what part of it is not going well. We believe at Q4 that your partnership impact report, which is what we call it, but your monthly report is kind of a grade card you had when you were a school kid, right? And if when your kids come home from school, maybe you've got two kids, you got these two little boys. One boy runs in and he says, Mom, look at my report card, look at my report card. And she can't do anything until she looks at his report card. He's chasing her around, he wants to show her his report card. And you know why? Because he got really good grades. Whatever that was for him, his grades were good. And the other kid, while that one's chasing Mom around the kitchen, the other kid slinks up to his room and hopes Mom doesn't notice, hopes Mom doesn't ask for his report card. You know why he doesn't want Mom to ask for his report card? Because chances are he didn't do as well on his report card. So if your marketing company is asking you for data, if they're asking you for information, if they're sending you reports on a regular basis, if they're having that conversation, chances are it's because they want you to be connected to the results they're creating for you, and they're excited about the work they're doing for you. If they're not sending those on a regular basis or getting that information is a struggle or painful, think about it in the same way. Chances are they don't want you to dive into that data. They don't want you to see the information because it's not exactly going to tell a great story. So this is one thing, and if you have a marketing partner, how those two things can be interpreted. but really lean on them to lead this discussion for you. And when you do that, you have aha moments that come out of your data. You realize numbers for September were up year over year, and then you can plan based on that. You can plan what worked and what didn't, and then that gets you to a place of being able to measure your return on investment. You need to get in the mindset that marketing is an investment in the growth of your business. I know we just got through tax season, so your tax provider, your CPA, probably told you what you spent on marketing, and you look at that. He said it was an expense, and you could write that off on your taxes. But in reality, marketing is an investment in the growth of your business. And if you're going to make that investment, whether it's time or money, back to the beginning of our conversation, those are the two things you can invest. Whether it's time or money, you need to have a plan to track your ROI. And how else would you know if it's worth doing or not? You have to have a plan on how you're going to track that ROI to ultimately measure its effectiveness. But that's a mindset shift that's really important for you to make as a business owner, as a marketing director, as a general manager, whatever role you find yourself in within your business. Marketing is an investment in the growth of your business, not an expense. And as such, it's going to take time to receive a return on that investment, but you should be expecting a return on your investment. And this is another thing. Your marketing partner should be reporting to you as part of your monthly marketing report. Every monthly marketing report we send out ends with ROI, or return on investment. Yes, some of that has to be estimated based on so many factors that go into it, but we're looking at that because it's one of the key performance indicators we track to know if things are headed in the right direction. And we believe, and we've been told by our customers, that if we're able to provide a 200 to 300% ROI, that they'll be happy. It'll stay with us for years. So that's a goal we set as a company, and I would encourage you to have your own goal and say, this is what I'm expecting from an ROI on the marketing investing that I'm doing. So what's your next step? If you're anything like me, you come to these presentations, you come to webinars, you learn so much, you get inspired, you get fired up, and then the phone starts ringing and the emails start pouring in and you get distracted and you forget to take a next step. So I want you to take a next step. We as a company believe that if we all start doing marketing better, that we will all get better as an industry. So as such, we give away a ton of information just like this webinar, and we help people take those next steps. So if that's something you're looking for, I would encourage you to request our marketing grader. We'll give you a score, 0 out of 100. We'll help you understand how it compares to your industry peers, and we'll give you actionable ideas you can begin the process of implementing today, which I think is the most valuable thing that comes out of the whole thing, is the actionable ideas, so you know what needs to change in your marketing to get your marketing score higher, which the score is just an unbiased way of measuring how it's performing. There's nothing magical about that. What's magical is the result that you can generate if you start doing better. You know, wherever you come in on that, if you make changes, you make improvements, you will see changes in your overall business. You'll see growth in your overall business. So take advantage of that opportunity. We'll send out I'll send out an email afterwards inviting you to take advantage of that, or you can just email me at my email address, which is matt@q4launch.com. You can always email me, and we'll set you up with that information there too. So now we want to dive in and hit some Q&A. You have questions, we have solutions. Hopefully we'll provide you more than just answers and actual solutions to your problems. So I know a few things have popped in the chat panel since we began our time together here today, so let me jump over there and dive into those questions. If you have questions you haven't asked yet, now would be a great time to go ahead and do that as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat panel. We'll do our best to get those answered there. So question here from Elizabeth. How do I go about if I'm just launching my website and if I did not have a database? If you're just launching your website, Elizabeth, it's a little bit of a different strategy. There's definitely some parts of it you're not going to connect with. Email marketing is going to be harder. But if you're just launching your website, now is one of the best times to be investing into blogging and content creation and social media and those other things. It's going to take some time to build a database to really be able to email market effectively. But it's a really important habit to start, if nothing else, to get in the habit of doing that and the consistent pattern of doing that as you're working to grow your database and grow those other parts of your overall strategy. So great question, Elizabeth. Hopefully that's helpful for you as well as anybody else who maybe doesn't have a database today, and how do I get started? Question here from Chris. What is the best or easiest app for blogging? Great question, Chris. I would say the best, and what we have seen the best results on for our customers, is to use a WordPress blog. Now, don't confuse that with the free WordPress blogs that are out there. This is using the WordPress content management system to have a blog that is a part of your website, which is a really important part of it. Because if someone is going to find you via Google search and land on that blog post, it had better be designed in a way that it matches the overall look and feel of the rest of your website. Because that's how people are going to go from finding you to diving deeper into your website, discovering your property, and ultimately making a booking with you. So the design of that is really important. The other thing that's really important is to make sure that your blog is at .com/blog. This isn't always possible, depending on what other software you use to run your website. Sometimes you have to do a subdomain, like blog.mydomain.com. But whenever possible, we encourage people to use mydomain.com/blog for their URL. We've got a ton of case studies and a ton of data to back up that is the best way, that is the preferred way that Google wants to see your blog and to see that content. And the root of the issue is that doing it that way, all of that content becomes a part of your domain name, as opposed to blog.mydomain.com is a subdomain, which is a sub of that parent domain, and it's not viewed the same way by Google. There's a ton of argument out there in the world and schools of thought on this, but I'm here to tell you, you've got data after data to back up exactly how I've just laid it out for you. And we've helped many customers move their blog to that style and that URL structure and seen results come on that they weren't seeing before, even with the same content, by making that change. Appreciate that question, Chris. Hopefully I didn't over-answer it for you, but wanted you to really understand everything that went into that. Question here from Sheila. What is the average open and click-through rate for our industry on email campaigns? Great question, Sheila, and great to see you. The average open rate for the travel industry, we don't have it segmented down travel, right? Because our subsection of the industry, they don't keep data on because it's not big enough. But on the travel industry as a whole, the average open rate is about 20%, and the average click-through rate is about 2%. So there's tons of factors that go into this. Quality of list, lots of other things that factor into those numbers, because of course they're all percentages of your overall database. So if your database is relatively unqualified, you're going to have lower numbers. If your database is all past guests that stayed with you and loved you, your numbers are going to be higher. But 20% and 2%, 20% open rate, 2% click-through rate is the industry average. What we see as the averages we achieve is more like a 30 to 40, sometimes 50% open rates, and a 4% click-through rate. So 30% is probably the low end of the average that we see, and a 4% click-through rate for what we see specific to our industry. So if you're not performing there, there's lots of changes that could be made to get your performance there. The other thing you got to think about is what's the quality of your list. You might have opted to have a larger list, but know that it's a little bit more unqualified, and as such, your percentages will be a little bit lower, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different approach. So hopefully that's helpful for you as you're thinking about open rates and click-through rates. But again, don't get too caught up in those, and forget the fact that just being top of mind is a goal in and of itself. Unfortunately, it's a goal you can't measure. Looks like we have a follow-up question here from Elizabeth. Can you please repeat that again? I'm not sure exactly when, Elizabeth, you asked that or what I was talking about at the time you asked it, so be happy to repeat it again if you can expand for me on what you'd like me to repeat, but not sure exactly what you want me to be talking about. So feel free to drop that in the chat panel if you're still on the call with us, and I'll get that question re-answered for you there. A question here from John about what email marketing software do you recommend? Appreciate that question, John. Get that question a lot, actually, and it really depends. We use some pretty high-level, high-power, pretty expensive email marketing software that is really built for agencies or built for marketing groups that do this for a living. But if you're doing this on your own and you're trying to do it that way, there's two I'd recommend. The first would be MailChimp. There's a lot we like about the MailChimp platform. There's several things we don't like about it, but there's a lot we do like about the MailChimp platform. So that's the #1 recommendation I would have, unless you consider yourself an advanced email marketer. If you consider yourself pretty advanced, send us another message and we'll follow up with you on some more advanced strategies like the ones we use. And then the second we would recommend would be Constant Contact. That can be a good source for you as well. We don't like it as much as MailChimp. We don't like MailChimp as much as some of the other stuff that we use, but both are good platforms and a great place to start from an email marketing perspective. The follow-up question from Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I'm sorry, I'm still not quite understanding what it is that you're asking. So be happy to connect with you. Why don't you shoot me an email, and then we can do that, or request a marketing grader, and then we would have, we'd set aside about 30 minutes dedicated to you to really be able to answer that question and be connecting, not via chat, so we can make sure we get you a clear answer to your question. So want to make sure that we get that answered for you. So if there's any other questions, happy to hang out here for a few more minutes and answer those in the chat panel. If not, then we appreciate y'all coming. Stay tuned. We're going to be having more webinars coming up. Took a little hiatus as we were traveling quite a bit as a staff to lots of trade shows in the last few weeks and months, but we will be spinning these back up and doing a lot more webinars in the coming months. So thank you all for coming. Look forward to connecting with you again soon. Keep your eye on your email inbox for that marketing grader request and a great opportunity for you to look at what next steps you need to take in your marketing. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.